Good evening and welcome to the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. My name is Phil Bossman, and I'm super excited to have you join us tonight. Tonight we are joined by Thomas Nieto. I think it's Nieto. It's Nieto, not Nieto. I think it's Nieto.
Nieto.
Nieto. It just sounded right. It sounded wrong in my head when I said it. So, good morning, and there you go. There's Thomas, and he's going to talk to us about package management. So, I'm super excited to see this tonight. I saw it on the PowerShell community call a couple months ago, and we reached out to Thomas and said, "Hey, we got to see this more over," because he gave the talk in a small little demo, and this is a content that we feel should be shared more openly, and we wanted to give him an opportunity to come out and go deep dive, and that's what this group's all about. So we're super excited, and take it away, Thomas.
All right. So I'm going to be demoing a module that I created a couple of years ago called AnyPackage, and it's a package management one-git replacement. And we'll go into more detail what that actually means. But first, let's go ahead and oops, talk about who am I. So my name is Thomas Nieto. I'm a principal technology architect at Oracle. I've been using PowerShell for 13, 14 years now, and PowerShell has really been able to give me that drive and that push in my career to actually stand out from the crowd, to use those scripting abilities, to use those tool sets to actually really solve a lot of problems at work. Be that building, writing scripts to build servers, patch them, maintain them, all that kind of stuff, or even, like the fire drill sense, right? Going out like, you need to do this action on all the nodes, all the servers. Go get it done. PowerShell remoting is great for that, and that has really been able to using PowerShell to really further my career. And I probably wouldn't be with this title if I didn't have that. So PowerShell is a great tool. So let's take a look and see how we can use it. So the
So,
package.
hey,
Go ahead.
Thomas, are
Yeah.
you presenting a PowerPoint slide?
Oh, do you not see that?
No, we just still CVS Code still.
Oh, I. Okay, sorry. I thought I selected the whole screen here. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was like, hey, I think I've seen a PowerPoint presentation. Maybe he
You
switched to.
totally did. Here it is. You see it now? I was gonna ask you that earlier.
You're good, man. You're good. Keep on
All right.
going. Great
All
job.
right. So we're gonna be talking about the package management landscape. So normally when you have a package manager, each platform is going to have its own package manager. So think of PowerShell has its own package manager, NuGet has its own package manager, like Linux, Windows, Mac OS, all these different platform and technologies. They have their own package manager, and what that does is, you have to learn the new tool, you have to figure that out, and you see even some package or some platforms have their multiple package manager. So some examples of that is like uh, RPM, those like for Yum or DNF, or for Node, you have NPM, you have Yarn, you have Bun, and it's a couple others. And so there's a lot of package managers out in the world here, and there's going to be new ones created all the time. They're not going to get down to a single point where you can just learn, a couple package managers for each technology and be good to go. They're always going to be changing. There's always going to be new ones. And so what comes into there's that problem of you as the user, you need to first, let's say you get tasked with learning that new technology or that platform. You need to go dig into the documentation. You need to learn out what the executable is. You need to figure out how to use it. What are the commands? What are the subcommands? What are the parameters? All that stuff. There's not a consistent user interface with interacting with that. And once you do learn that, it's not easily transferable to the next package management you learn. You might be able to guess what some of the commands are. Is it update? Is it upgrade? Is it list or search or find? You don't really know. And once you use the help and the command or stuff like that, or look at the documentation, you can get a general idea. And then the other problem is once you run those commands, what is the output given back to you? You can look at it, you can see it on the screen, but how do you parse that? How do you make that into a separate tool to like automate that and report back on it and send it to a reporting system? There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so there was a solution for that. The PowerShell team created package management, and that's a module that's bundled in PowerShell, and its original name was called WinGet. So I'm gonna just call it WinGet further in the slides and when we're talking about it, just because it's shorter and easier to say. But it was a module created by the PowerShell team back in 2015, and its goal was to create a unified package management interface. So what does that mean? So you would have a defined set of commandlets and parameters that you would use, and there would be extensions onto that. So you would be able to load in a package provider, and it would have the logic in there to interact with said package manager. So you would only just need to learn one set of commands, and you'd be able to interact with separate things. And it was even if you never use OneGit directly, you use PowerShell Git through you use it through PowerShell Git v2. So it's under the scenes. PowerShell Git v2 called package management to do handle all the NuGet uh, files, all the dependencies, all that stuff. But what they found was the way OneGit was architected, it caused a lot of issues for the PowerShell Git team, since they had their own layer on top of that to interact with OneGit, and OneGit made its own decision, so they had to deal with two separate things. So that caused a lot of issues for them. And so with PowerShell Git v3, also known as PS Resource Git, they removed that dependency and they've moved all that code, the NuGet code, into PS Resource Git. And as such, now that the team is not using it directly anymore, they consider it feature complete, and it's now since been deprecated. Um, so there's been a lot of issues with OneGit, a lot of user complaints. I'll list out a couple here, but um, just like with PowerShell Git v3 or PS Resource Git addressing the major complaints that v2 had, what AnyPackage does is it's doing that for OneGit. So I went through every single OneGit issue that's out there that was open and ensured that AnyPackage didn't have that issue, it was addressed, or it didn't apply, or anything like that. And so some of the goals I wanted to have with it is I wanted to easily add new commandlets or new features. With OneGit, the oldest open issue is actually update package. And it's been open since like 2015, 2016, and has never been completed. There were some technical issues with that, some design issues, but it was never actually completed. So with this project, I wanted to easily add new features and new commandlets. And I also wanted it to have an intuitive user experience. OneGit had some issues where, and I'll probably show this a little later on, but let's say you're going to install a package, there's a parameter on there that gets added called all versions. And when you try to run install package dash all versions for a package, it will throw an error saying, well, you can't actually install all the versions. It doesn't let you. But as a user, that's a little confusing and unintuitive where you gave me the parameter, why can't I use it? And so what happens is in the OneGit side, when you added a dynamic parameter to that and it added it for the interaction, it would have three different categories. The parameter could be for a package source, or the provider, and the provider was never used. But what was intended is that all versions was intended for find package. So, but since it showed up for install package as well, it created that confusion. So I wanted to address those issues as well. And then the next thing is a simple authoring experience. So going through OneGit, building out your extension, authoring that in C# or PowerShell, you just had to go through and learn a lot of things. So I wanted it to be very simple for C# native developers as well as PowerShell first developers, so you'd be familiar with that. And then I wanted the extensions to be able to be written in both languages as well. AnyPackage, the module is a spiritual successor to OneGit. So what does that actually mean? So it's not a fork of OneGit. It doesn't share any code. The only thing that it borrows is some of the commandlet names and some of the parameter names. And as such, since it doesn't share any of the code, it doesn't carry over any of the baggage, doesn't carry any over the issues. It's from the ground up redesign of it. And the other thing that comes with that is it doesn't support any of the OneGit providers. So any of them, that there was about 30 OneGit providers, and now there's quite a few less, but they're slowly being built up over time. So if you had issues with OneGit and didn't like how it worked, give AnyPackage a shot. I've tried to address everything. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the features. On the technology side, it's cross-platform, so it's going to work on Windows, Linux, and Mac. It's written in C#, like I mentioned earlier, so it's going to be performant. It's going to be able to handle things in C Sharp as well as PowerShell from the extensibility standpoint. And then on the PowerShell side, it's going to support the legacy Windows PowerShell, so 5.1 and above. It supports updatable help, so some nice things about that. You're going to be able to the help's not actually bundled with the module, so you'll run update help just like you would with the standard built-in Microsoft modules. And one nice thing about that is that the help can be updated outside of the module, so I don't need to ship a new version if there's a typo. But the main thing that I see that's really nice about updatable help is that it supports localization. So if you have different languages, you're able to localize those strings so that and the help so that they can be used and be easily consumable by other languages. I haven't done that yet, but the module is set up to support that. And then we got some argument completers here. So this argument completers, if you haven't really added these in before, they really make the PowerShell experience a lot nicer. It makes it very user intuitive that you can just have your parameter, tab it, and see all the list of valid parameters. And then with PowerShell 7.4, they added feedback provider or feedback provider and the command predictor in 7.2. And I'll show a demo of this a little later, but what it allowed any package to do is have command not found feedback. So when you would run a command, let's say vim, and it didn't exist on the system or in your path, it would suggest packages to install that from and give you the command to do so. And the last thing we have here is DSC resources. So I mentioned a package provider a couple times now, but what does that actually mean? So a package provider is the bridge between any package and the package manager. So any package has its own way that it wants things handled, and there's that interface that you need to build out, and it handles that translation layer from the commands that you're running in PowerShell to the package manager, and it's also handing the output from the package manager back to any package so it can be consumed. They're in PowerShell modules. That's how they're shipped. So if you want to load a package provider, all you just need to do is import the module, and it'll be loaded into your session. And this behavior is built off of PowerShell providers. If you've imported one of those that are not built in with PowerShell, so like SQL Server or the Dell BIOS PS provider. So when you import that module, it will add the drive, add the provider, and everything like that. So it works similar. This is the list of the current package providers. There's 11 out here. Uh, Last year when I did a demo on it, there was about 7 or 8. So I added a couple this year. The ones that we've added are .NET Tool. So this is in NuGet. There's the ability to install .NET tools, and what that is that some developer can package up a tool and say, use the .NET tool install command and install that tool to your local system. You can use it for development. You can use it for whatever you want. It's just a nice way to grab those. PowerShell is even delivered as a .NET tool as well. So this is a package provider to handle that. apt is the Linux Debian-based package manager or advanced package tool. Chocolatey, I'm sure many people have heard of Chocolatey before as the longest Windows package manager. It's very wide known. And the next one we have here is Homebrew. This is for Linux and Mac devices. And then ModuleFast is Justin Grody's module to install modules very quickly, usually in CI/CD. The MSU package provider is the Windows update files, so you can install those through this as well. You get to see which ones are installed and uninstalled, etc. PackageX, this one was made, I didn't know about it until recently. It's brought to my attention, and I went ahead and added it. And this is a Linux and Mac package manager. It's made by the same guy who made Homebrew, and it's designed to install packages in the very quickly without actually installing them to the system, and like caches them to your local directory. And then PS Resource Git, we talked about that. That's PowerShell Git v3. So this is your PowerShell modules, PowerShell scripts. The next one we have there is programs. So this is the Windows add remove programs. So you're able to list out all the programs that are installed on your system and uninstall them. And then the second to last one we have here is Scoop. This is a lot of people like using Scoop. It installs command line tools and some GUI tools very well. It installs them to your local directory, so you don't actually have to deal with the UAC prompt. Um, adds the command line executables to your path very easily as well. You don't have to reset that. And then WinGet as I would say the newest on the block. This one is a Windows Package Manager by Microsoft. It handles a variant of package types, and yeah. So let's go ahead and take a
So
look at. Go
can I
ahead.
go
Yeah,
back to that
sure,
slide there?
sure.
So for those who are kind of not familiar and they see some words that they do know and they see some products that they do know. And so in short, AnyPackage is a provider or is a unified interface. It is a provider that will allow you to, if you know to do something in Chocolatey or you know to working in Scoop or any of the other, or even MSU. So hey, working with packages, patches, excuse me. And the idea is that hey, now you'll have a unified interface in which to interface with these products and these apps and delivery method. That's what your end goal is, right? Or that's what the goal is of using this product.
That's correct. Yep. So
Okay.
once the package provider exists for your thing, now you're able to use that underlying package manager like Chocolatey or Scoop or whatever in a defined set of commandlets, which are provided through any package.
And it's a unified set so that hey, if I need to use the same kind of similar commands to deal with patches and programs, it's the same stuff. If I'm doing just happens to be the program that I'm going to install is using Choco install. Correct.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of level set for everybody, and I appreciate the time. Thanks.
All right, and let's take a look at a couple of potential ones that can be added in the future. We have the older OneGet providers that haven't been ported over yet. So, like MSI would be dealing with your Windows installers. Um, that was a nice one to easily work with MSI files in a defined manner. NuGet, so this is your .NET packages, and then Doug Fink created a GIST GitHub provider, and so you would be able to install uh, GitHub GIST as like a package. So you'd just copy them down to your local machine. You'd have the list of the ones that are currently uh, locally on your system, and you'd be able to view that. And so there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. A couple of them on Linux as well. So like DNF. So this is the Red Hat based systems. Pacman, I believe, is Arch, and then application language ones. So think of Docker containers. You can manage those as a package. Download the images. Python pip. Download those Python modules. npm for Node, and myriad of others. So like really anything, as long as it fits into the you know finding, installing, updating, removing, as long as it fits into that general scheme, you can make anything a package. So the sky's the limit there, basically. So let's go ahead and jump back to a demo here, and we're going to go over how to use the module. Like we talked earlier, everything looks good for the size and everything.
Looking good. Thanks.
All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at what commands are provided through any package. So there are two types of commands. There are package commands and package source commands. So the package commands, so you have find package, get package, install package. So we'll go over these real quick. So find package, this is like you need to find a package in a repository. It's going to return those for you. Get package is going to be what is currently installed on the system. Install package is self-explanatory. It's installing the package so it can be found with it later. Uh, Publish, this is publishing a package to a repository. Think of a local file system or a web-based API like uh, PowerShell Gallery. Saving package, this would be like copying down the package to the local file system so you can inspect it without actually installing it. Uninstall package is removing installed packages from your system, and updating package is taking existing and currently installed packages and updating them. And then on the package source, you can get currently registered package sources. So think of PowerShell Gallery, think of NuGet.org, stuff like that, or the Chocolatey community repository. And then you can also register them as well. So if you have it supports a local file system or an internal feed for your company, you can register those. Set is just updating an existing registered source, and then unregistered is removing that. So let's go ahead and take a look at how do you discover the package providers that exist. So I don't have to, build and maintain all of these. If you want to go out and you want to build your own package provider for something like an internal package management system in your company, or like you want to say do whatever you want with it, like you can build your own. And we're going to go show you how to build your own later. But the way that it's found is there's going to be two tags on here: AnyPackage and provider. With those two tags, you can find all of the existing ones on the PowerShell gallery or your internal feeds. And so how you install a package provider, since it's just a PowerShell module, you're just going to install it with install module or install PS resource. And then once it's locally installed on your system, you can use get package provider list available. And what that's going to do is it mimics the get package list available. So you can see all of them installed. So it has the name of the package provider, has the module that it comes from, and the module name as well. And to import one, you're just going to import the module. And what you can also do, I've done this a couple times, is that you can take the package provider list available, grab the module property, and just import all of them all at one go. And then to see currently imported package providers, you can go ahead and run get package provider. And so you'll notice that the view is a little different, and it has the same module version and package provider name. The priority we're going to get into a little later, but the operations is the one-to-one relationship usually of this package provider supports the find package commandlet. It supports git and install, uninstall. The git source is the git source commandlet, and then the set source is a little different where it supports register, set, and unregister package sources. So that's the only one where it's multiple to one. And we're going to go ahead and show you how to remove them from your currently imported. You just remove the module, and now you can see that Chocolatey, Module Fast, and .NET tools are gone. So we currently have MSU programs, PS Resource Git, Scoop, and WinGet. And so let's go ahead and get all the currently installed applications. That's completed there. And you'll notice here, let me go to the top. You have a couple columns here. So the name, the package name, the version is the package version. It supports multiple different uh, package schemes. We'll get into that in a little bit. But if you notice here, some of these don't have any values. So version and source are optional. They don't actually have to be provided because there's some package provider systems that don't have a concept of it. Like think of, KBs. There's MSU files. They don't actually have versions. So you have it installed or you don't have it installed. And then the source, this is normally where the repository that it came from, or in the sense of like Windows programs, it's going to be like where it's locally installed from. And then one of the major complaints that I saw with OneGit is that the package versions were not sortable. It was a string. And so I went and put a lot of effort into making versions sortable. And the way that's accomplished is that it supports version schemes. So I have the one type called package version, and it's going to support multiple different types. And the multiple different types are alphanumeric, so this is just a plain old string. This can't really be compared with any of the numeric based versions that we're going to talk about in a second, but it's going to be in the sorting version rules, it's going to be marked as the highest since it can't be compared with anything else. And then for the numerical based ones, we have integer, so this is just a plain whole number. Then we have the multi-part numeric. This one's going to be dot segmented version. So think of major dot minor dot anything else. One thing to take note about this is that this is not the system.version type. This supports as many dot segmentations as you want. So if you want 10 or 12 or 15, you can have that. Multi-part numeric with a suffix. So this is the same as the other one, except it has a string at the end. So a letter and a number. And then the last one is semantic versioning. So this would be your semantic version 2.0, major, minor, patch, and then it can have a pre-release and build metadata. So how those are handled in sorting, so alphanumeric would be the highest or the latest. then multi-part numeric with a suffix. So usually, if you let's think of 1.2 and 1.2a, the 1.2a would be considered higher than the other one. And then the multi-part numeric and the semantic version is going to be considered the same as long as there's no pre-release. And then integer based. So if you have a version 1 and a version 1.1, the 1.1 is going to be higher. And the last but not least, the semantic versioning would be a pre-release version. So this would be considered the lowest one of all. So 1.0 beta is going to be lower than 1.0. And then how version is parsed is that it tries to parse it as a semantic version first, since that's the strictest rules. Then it'll try to parse it as a multi-part numeric with a suffix, then multi-part numeric, then integer, and then if it can't do any of those, then it falls back to alphanumeric. So once we got through the versions, we'll take a
Well,
look on how we
can
go ahead.
I
Go jump
pause?
in.
Can I? Yeah, I'm
Sure.
gonna pause you for a minute and kind of let's go back to just getting all the packages. So you went and wanted to make sure that kind of everybody understands what you've kind of thrown here. You threw out some magic, and I think it takes some if you don't see what's happening here. And so what happened is that you installed AnyPackage as a module that can do
Yep.
these finds and gets and that kind of thing. Then you added specific providers. Now that provider may have been PSU programs at that point. And then if you scroll up in your code, I just want to see where did you go? Like, right, basically you did one thing, says get me, you kind of did some pre-work to say install some provider packages so that, hey, I want to do some discovery of or usage of Chocolatey packages or programs or MSUs. And so just by installing those extra modules along with any package, you can then use the single line of get package and get basically a full inventory of whatever's on the machine. So I can easily see, hey, tell me all the patches that have been installed on the machine, MSUs, and along with all the software. So with one command, I can just basically inventory the entire machine, right? And I
Yep.
can then, if I use those package products, I can then install and do other things based upon what you kind of talked about before. It's like, what are the capabilities of that package itself? And so that's really what I think is, excuse me, the magic of any package, right, is to unify that environment. And these are all objects at this point, right? So like Docker desktop, that is an object. You can go through that and other inspect. There's data because that provider provides that information, right? So if you do Docker
Yep.
package, where name is Docker desktop. That is an object, right?
Yep. So let's go. We'll just do that, right?
Yeah.
Name Docker desktop. Throw that in there. There it is.
And
Let
if
me go
you
ahead and
format to a table, yeah. What else do you got? Or select. So
so
all of that piece of comfort. So let's talk about that.
yeah. So just since we once we brought it up here, right? So this object has the name, the version. It can have an optional description. It can have an optional source. And the one nice thing is it has metadata. And so what you can do is you can, since this package provider is enumerated and all that, what what for specifically for the programs one, it's going through the registry and pulling all of that metadata out of there. So it's showing you the icon, display name, all of that stuff. And also pulls the install string, which it's going to use later when you uninstall it. It's going to pull that string and say, all right, uninstall this or uninstall silently. But it's going to,
So
yep,
no, go ahead. No, yeah. So you can really is without getting into the registry, without trying to figure out this stuff, I use this one module, and I can find the uninstall string to any installed program on the machine. Like that is worth, buying you a coffee or something like that.
well, here's the best part, right? You don't even need to know what the install string is, right? Later on, right, you can go Docker desktop, uninstall, uh, you can just pipe it to uninstall and it will uninstall it for you.
Don't live dangerously.
I'm not going to uninstall it, but yes, that is an example, right? So
No,
all of
that's
these
awesome.
support, all of the commandlets support pipeline input. So you can pipe the objects from one to the other, right? So I had an example on here one time that I just went find package, piped it to install package, piped it to update package, and then piped it to uninstall. And I just went through the whole package lifecycle, right? And just piped them from one to the next. So we'll
I
go
like
ahead
that.
and
Even just hey, I can do a clean uninstall and reinstall of the application. Go.
yep. Mhm. Anyone else have any questions?
No, I think it's awesome. Go.
All right, cool. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the version parameter works because I want to spend a little time on that because it is a little confusing if you've never used uh, NuGet version syntax before, version range syntax. This is the same syntax that PS resource or PowerShell Get v3 uses. So I'm just going to use find package on PS readline. The star, just like with any PowerShell wildcards, that denotes everything. So you can see here it returned every single one of them for the PS resource from PowerShell Gallery, all the available versions, and it also pulled in my scoop one as well, since that's up there. You can pass the explicit version. So this one's just going to show you that exact version. And so now we're going to look at the version ranges. And if anyone has any questions on this, I'm more than welcome to ask them because it is a little confusing if you haven't dug into it before. So the first character can be either a square bracket or a parenthesis. And a square bracket denotes inclusive. So what this is telling me is 1.0 include versions that start with 1.0, including 1.0, because the square bracket's inclusive. The comma separates the versions, and the highest one can be 2.0. But see that as a parentheses. So what that's telling me is that that's exclusive. So it's saying include 1.0 all the way up to, but not including 2.0. So this is very useful. So if you use semantic versioning or if your module leverages semantic versioning basically says each major version of a package, it has breaking changes. So if my module depends on another module or something like that, if I'm on the 1.0 version range, I can take any 1.0 and it should be fine, no breaking changes. But I can't take 2.0 because that's going to introduce breaking changes, which I may need to change in my code. So if we run this here, it's going to return all of the 1.0 versions. And this is a different way of showing it. The next one, if I don't supply a lower band, it's just supplying the higher band. And then here's an example of just showing the lower band, but no higher band. So it's going to show everything from 1.0 up to anything. And this one's only going to show anything versions lower than 2.0. All right. The next thing is with the version parameter, they do have different behavior depending on which command that you use. There's two groupings here. So find and get package, they're going to return all packages within that version range. So as we saw here, returned all of these. But the install package, update package, and save package will only use the latest version. Um, Moving on from the version, we're going to talk about not only can you find install packages by name, you can also do a couple other things. You can use it by path and by URI. So here's a couple examples of the path. So right there, MSUs, right? You can't install it via name like KB123. You might with KB update module and a couple others, but with the straight MSU files, you can't do that. So this example here shows that you can pass it a path and it supports wildcards. And it also, the second example here with the literal path, you can pass it just like with the get child item and all the other item commandlets, those you can pass it explicit if they contain, excuse me, contain like square brackets and other stuff in the name. The one thing I jumped over a little earlier was the package priority. So we'll talk about a little bit what that does. So I'm going to go ahead and get the package provider, and I'm going to get the PS resource get. And so that gets returned. I saved it to a variable here, and you can see the priority is 100. Let me just get um, all of them. So by default, all of them get imported with 100. And this value can support from 0 to 255. And this is the number, the lower the number, the higher the priority, kind of like group policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the priority to 0 for PS resource get. I'm going to export that here so you can see that. And I'm also going to run the commandlet to show you that it does actually update. This object will get returned, and it's the same one that's in the commandlet. So now everything besides PS resource get has 100. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the package lifecycle, and what it's going to do is the I guess let me go back a second. The package priority. The reason that has to exist is, let's say we have a package from multiple different package providers. So I'm going to say Scoop, WinGet, and Chocolatey. They all have a package called 7-zip. But when you install a package for 7-zip, you don't want it from all three providers. Right? You don't want to do that duplicate work. So what the priority system does is that it's going to sort the package providers. So when it does the execution serially, it's going to sort based on priority. And so that in this example, PS resource get is going to be the first chance. If it can find the package and install it, it's going to stop there. But if it can't find it, it's going to go to the next one, and then to the next one, then to the next one, until it can actually install that package. So we're going to go ahead and install the package. It's going to install it from the only one that's here is the PS resource get. So I'm just using PowerShell modules just because they're quick and easy to install. So I have 1.0 here, and I passed the explicit version there. I'm going to go ahead and update that. So you can see 1.001 got installed. So now when I install or run git package, it's going to return both. And then the last thing I'm going to do is going to uninstall them. And now with pass through, it returns the object. Both of them get uninstalled since I didn't pass a qualifier with version. And here's a couple other examples of using specific providers to actually install certain things. So in this example here, I'm going to install 7-zip with Scoop. I'm going to install Firefox with WinGet, and I'm going to install Python with Chocolatey. So remember, any of the packages that those package management system and those package providers supply, you have access to within one single command here. You just have to install the module, import the module for the package provider, and have any package installed. And you have basically hundreds, thousands of packages available to you at your fingertips without having to learn each package manager's specific nuances and commands and subcommands and parameters.
So if you install the Chocolatey provider, will it detect and give you errors that Chocolatey is not there, or even same thing similar Scoop, or will it kind of install Chocolatey for you? How does that work?
Yeah, so all of these, the package provider relies on the required dependencies to already be installed. So for example, if you're using Scoop, you need to have Scoop already installed. Like if you mentioned Chocolatey, you have to have Chocolatey installed. It's not going to install them for you because I didn't want to change the system without you knowing. So as a prereq, if you're onboarding your system for this, if you want to use Chocolatey, install the Chocolatey pieces there, and then install the provider, and then now you can use it. Answer your question there?
It will throw errors if it's not there.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. The last thing here, save package. So this one's just going to copy down the files, and it's going to copy them to temp in my example here. Let's take a look at dynamic parameters. Dynamic parameters are a really awesome feature, but they get a bad rap because people use them in bad ways. But dynamic parameters were created for systems like this. They were originally created for PowerShell providers. And so what I mean by PowerShell provider is all the ones that the HKLM, all these drives that get added, these are all PowerShell providers. The file system's a PowerShell provider. And so what it does for you, it will provide certain parameters in certain contexts. So let's say I'm in the file system and I do a get item. It's going to have get child item, I think. Yep, here we go. You will notice here, get child item has follow symlink, directory, file, hidden, read only. Well, that doesn't make sense for a registry, right? So if I cd and I look at this, you can see all those parameters just disappeared. They no longer exist because I'm having a different context of the registry. So I can use this and I can have the provider be the context. So normally, you can see here for find package, the parameters end in URI, and there's about 6 or 7 of them here. But if I have the provider of PS resource get and I do the same thing, why don't you demo gods here? Oh, here we go. I don't know why it's not working in the, but you can notice here there's other ones added as well. Credential, tag, type, latest, and include dependencies. Those get added if you're working with a specific provider. So now that you can, if you're writing a package provider or you're using a package provider, if the default parameters that are included within any package aren't sufficient because there's some workflow, like for example, there's install package um, provider on Scoop. There's an architecture here. So now you can see it has argument completers. So I can install, I don't know, 7-zip, right? And I can install the 32-bit version. Architecture is not included. Architecture doesn't exist by default. Only the Scoop provider is adding that because it needs it, because you may want to install the ARM version of a package or a 32-bit or a 64-bit.
What happens when some of the packages names are similar?
Uh, what do you?
Like,
Yeah.
like say for example, maybe one is like Microsoft Defender or something like that. There's a whole bunch of Microsoft in the names, and it were to find say like 5 in a row. Would you be able? You would have to specifically say that name, or if you were to just type in part of the name, would it be able to actually install? Like say Docker, if you just type in Docker and said Docker desktop, would it install just the one item or would it install all of them?
So the way it works is find and get support wildcards for the name. So you can see here I put in Microsoft and it returns a whole bunch of these. But install package doesn't support wildcards. So if you wanted to have a similar, right, you're only going to have one. So if you wanted to have, um, find package, I don't know, Microsoft something. So you can then, this is, you returned all of them, right? Because maybe you don't know what the name is, like Copilot or something. Name, like, so now I'm going to save that. Then you could install it based on that if you wanted to. But install, update, or install, save, and uninstall, they don't support wildcards. So you're not going to have that concern of if I pass it Microsoft and it's fuzzy searching on that, it's not going to do that. Only the commandlets that support wildcards, you will have that multiple different ones returned.
Okay.
Okay,
So
I was going to say the reason why I asked that question, I know WinGet is like if you type in like say part of the name in it, it'll actually sometimes install something completely different unless you specifically find the name. So you just have to be very specific sometimes with
Yep.
at least WinGet.
That's one of my main gripes with WinGet actually is that it's just a substring match instead of like a PowerShell wildcard search. And there's actually um, different things with WinGet where it has where's the match? It might be on the commandlet, but it has like, do you want the search it on case and like by default WinGet is case sensitive, which is super annoying. But you can change that. But it also like when you say exact, it still does a substring search, and I have an issue out there for it. But any package is going to do it what you expect on the PowerShell way. If the command is exactly typed Microsoft.PowerShell or whatever, it's going to install Microsoft.PowerShell. It's not going to install the preview version because both of those have the same beginning of the string.
I
Thank you.
had a
Gilbert,
slightly
do you have a question? Yeah, go.
yeah, I had a slightly similar question. So, for example, like WinGet has a name and an ID. Is that
Mhm.
something that the package provider would make that available? Like I could search by ID, like if I was writing my own package provider.
Right, and so Ethan Bergstrom, one of my coworkers, I forgot to give a shout out to him, but he wrote all those. He wrote Homebrew, Chocolatey, and the WinGet OneGet providers, as well as the AnyPackage ones. So he actually, for your question for the ID versus the name, for WinGet, if you were to do um, WinGet, the package name that gets returned here is the ID. So it doesn't actually use the name; it's using the ID. So you can see 7zip.7zip.
Somebody else had a question, or at least their hand raised. I'm not. I think it was EAS. So, did you want to ask a question?
Here's one.
In the beginning,
David
yeah.
Richmond looks like confirm impact. Yes, all these do support what if and confirm. So no unexpected uninstalls.
Go ahead,
Thomas, you
EAS.
made
Yeah.
oh, Thomas, you made mention that this supports argument completers. Where does it support the argument completers? Is it just on the provider?
Not on the provider specifically, but we can show off that first, right? So it does do the provider one. So it does support that. The one it doesn't support is name, because for a package, just because it can't really, it would have to enumerate all of the package providers and get every single packages that ever exist. So it can't do
Mhm.
that. But the other ones it does, like source, uh, install package source. So this would be like a repository. You can see I can tap through all of these. So the WinGet, PowerShell gallery, main, and if I filter on a provider first, let's say PS resource get, then I can do source, and then it's going to filter just the PS gallery. So there are quite a few argument completers, specifically the provider, source, and a couple others I can't think of offhand. So
Probably could do the name one, but as you mentioned, you would need to take cache and
right,
look at the cache, because that's something that's been asked for in PS Resource Cat.
PS resource get, I can actually do that one probably. I'll have an example. We're actually to it now. Sure. um, so I have the command not found feature. So what I did in this one, just so you can see it, I went ahead and started a new session, um, and I just have two of them installed: the PS Resource Git and Scoop. Those are the only two that I support at the moment. WinGet, hopefully in the future. Um, but what I can do is that it has that command not found and the feedback provider and the command predictor. So let's say I want to find Vim. So this is using the feedback provider. It can't find the command. So AnyPackage hooks into that feedback provider on the command not found piece. And so now it suggested to me that it can find the Vim executable in the GOW package and the Vim package. And then I have another one here, start log, and you can see here there's like 20 of them here, but these are all from the PS resource git. And I can type install or the beginning of it, and I can, with that command predictor piece, select which one of them I want to install from. And you can see the little example. If you forget in the future, this package contains start log. So if you ran it a couple minutes ago and forgot and did something else and came back to it, it would suggest that to you. Phil, did you have a question? I saw your hand for a second.
No, I was trying to clap and I hit the other hand. So that's awesome. I think that this is another awesome piece of this, and you're doing a great job. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully more things can be in the future can use this. The only caveat with it is that it really needs to be cached. And because the feedback providers only get 300 milliseconds to run, which is a third of a second, which is not a lot of time. So that's why only certain providers support this feature. Because if, like, let's say you were to type WinGet, right, and it takes 3 seconds for it to return that package, well, that's already past its timeout. So that's why if you want to peek behind the hood, when you import the module, it actually opens a run space, which is a background PowerShell thread. And so when you type vim or any of the command not founds, it will loop through all of these, send a command, hey, do you have the vim package or whatever packet or the command? And it will send the request to both of these at the same time, and then hopefully they get returned within the time frame. So they get cached that way.
I do have a question about that. So, when are you creating those run spaces?
Those run spaces get created when you import the module.
Okay.
And then when you remove the module, it will also clean itself up. If I remove scoop right now, it would remove the scoop run space and the module as well, and the provider. Yep. Yes.
So if I install the package as a regular user, non-privileged admin, and the installation, let's say from WinGet, that required admin privileges, would it just fail?
It's going to, so it's calling WinGet under the scenes. So
Mhm.
normally WinGet will have that like UAC prompt and stuff, like,
Mhm.
right? So it will still do the exact same thing.
It'll just pass through
Right. It will just
the
pass through.
executable.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So like, for example, one of them that I don't have an example here, but for
So a good
MS,
example at that a good example at that point is it's not doing anything other than what the provider can already do. And so if WinGet can do it, then this can basically wrapping that component. And so you can't get more usability from it, right? It's a good example at that point.
right. But there's also, just to give you another example, like I've added features to package providers, right, that the package manager itself doesn't support. Like for example, package X doesn't support finding packages, but I went ahead and added that because they've, reverse engineered the way how it does stores them just for searching and stuff like that. So, but yes, but ultimately for your question for like UAC prompts and stuff like that, it's just the package provider. All it's really doing in the grand scheme of things is just taking your input, putting it into a way that the package manager wants, and then runs that package manager, and then takes the output of that and returns it in a way that any package in the PowerShell likes. Gilbert, did you have something else? I saw your hand for a second.
I actually, one of the things that I was thinking about is elevating package installations, right? Like there are packages that you're totally fine to install as a regular user, but then there's definitely scenarios. I have to go read the docs, but do you have anything that is like a dash run as administrator, even though it would like prompt me? That'd be kind of cool.
Not in any package itself, but that doesn't preclude like a package provider implementing something like that. Have you ever heard of gsudo, which is the Windows
Yeah,
elevation
totally. Yep.
UAC thing? So you could use something like that. Like there's a couple of, like, not in any of the AnyPackage stuff, but some package managers use that to do its elevation. Deadly Dog, what you got?
So correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a few years since I've used Chocolatey, but I guess my root question is, if I install a package with a specific provider, does it remember which provider it used? Because I know like one thing that blew me away with WinGet when I first tried it is there was apps that I installed from like an MSI installer manually or using other things, and it sort of knew about them all and could update them. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Chocolatey only knows about packages that were installed via Chocolatey. It's been a few years since I've used it, so I could be wrong on that. So my question would be like, if I installed something with Chocolatey and then I called the uninstall function and it used WinGet to uninstall it, would that like leave things dangling around in Chocolatey's configuration or something like that? Like, does it remember which one it installed with so it can use that one to uninstall as well?
I
I would say
believe
probably
that
not.
is the case. I think I'm not sure. Like, I'm not a chocolate user myself, but
So I actually asked this question to the WinGet team recently because I've been using Chocolatey for, well, forever now, and slowly trying to look at whether I go over to WinGet as a change of tooling. I noticed this would be an issue for wanting to get back just the packages that I've installed via WinGet, but also things that I've just downloaded randomly and wanted to do a test install. So like I installed Audacity the other day. That's then been returned by WinGet, but it wouldn't be returned by Chocolatey because it's not been installed by Chocolatey. And I didn't want WinGet just to be coming back with everything on disk. I just wanted it to bring back what it's installed. So in this case, what you're asking is, can the package providers themselves find out that they were the one that installed it and query across other providers to say, oh, we can't get that particular package because it's being managed and maintained by this other provider. And that's a much bigger bit of work that the WinGet team don't want to really do, if I'm honest. I don't blame them, but it's probably something that's quite worthwhile to try and work out how to get all of those tangly moving bits working in something like this, because this feels much more like the package manager solution that WinGet was supposed to have been.
Yeah, you totally summarized exactly what I was asking, Ryan. And like I said, like this might not even be a real problem. Like maybe 0.001% of people will encounter this issue, so maybe it's not worth solving. It's just something that popped into my head while watching this. So
I can definitely tell you that it's going to be a bit more than that lower level. The areas I'd see where it's probably going to be a problem is for MSPs, where they've got stuff going out via System Center. Now they're getting Intune. They may have Chocolatey in some areas. They may have other repositories like ProGet and other things like that. And trying to get that meld of who's managing what, where, when, and why is going to be what is going to cause them to do the migrations that we were talking about earlier.
Great discussion.
I sort of just asked my question in chat, but is there can you get all the packages across all your providers? Because I know I've worked with security teams. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the sorry not to cut you off, but just by running git package without the provider parameter, it's going to call all of the package providers that support the git operation. So as you can saw there, let's see here, group object. What is it? Provider. So I was going to return all those. So you can see it did return all of the package providers packages.
Yeah, and Gilbert, on your one in the chat about Chocolatey and its metadata, I believe from when I last went to do some cleanup from stuff that I had installed with Chocolatey and then was like, no, you don't need to touch this anymore. It is just a folder path in program data, and you can just delete the folder for that particular app.
I know it's changed between Choco V2 and Choco V3, but I mean, I have seen issues where we've rolled out packages. This was at a former company, and we're asked like, hey, have we rolled this out to 100%? And we say like, yes, the package manager says it's on 100% of the boxes, and we come to find out that actually it's only on 98% because there's a set of users who figured out that add remove control panel could just get rid of the applet, their app, and then we didn't necessarily know that, which is why printing every package, security would have loved that, 6 months ago, a year ago. So that's pretty cool.
I think the other aspect of that is that even if the provider says, oh yeah, we've installed it, you want to do a verification anyway to see whether it's in the state it should be.
Yeah, similar to that, if the user has figured out that, hey, I can rip it out of the registry, and all of a sudden now that, Adam root programs doesn't even see it, and hey, it's just sitting there in the program file. So, that is, if you're ripping apart, the way Windows works, you're not going to get much data. But at that point is it can do what it can do without being broken. But I like what you're going though with Gilbert though. I like that idea and I like the thoughts, and I think I can make some product out of that. So it's cool. Thanks.
All right, let's get back to it then. So one of the other features I mentioned earlier was the DSC capabilities. Um, so I'll show you an example of that. We'll run this first, let it run, and then I'll explain it. So this is just calling invoke DSC resource with some splatting here. So it's going to provide the name. So there are two DSC resources that are included in AnyPackage. They're in a separate module called AnyPackage DSC, just to follow the standard naming convention. So you can see that here. We're going to go ahead and run the method called set, and then we're going to supply the property. So we're going to, just like earlier, we're going to install the PowerShell module called SNMP. And the provider works. I didn't mention this earlier, but you can have one PowerShell module ship one or more package providers. And also the other thing, like with WinGet, had an issue where if, let's say, I ship a provider called, Choco, and then someone else ships a package provider called Choco, like if you have the duplicate names, how do you handle that? Well, it has the concept of a full name. So what this is the module name, including the package provider name. So for the DSC resource, it requires that so it can know which module to import and which package provider to use. It supports versioning. So one of the issues with the DSC resource, I believe was never fixed, is that it used just the name as the keys, but now you can use the name and the version, and the provider is the key. So now you could have, if your package provider supports side-by-side packages like PowerShell Git, you can have multiple versions of the same package installed. And so it supports the same, NuGet version syntax for the range, and then ensure and to install it, and the absent to remove it. And I don't know why this happened earlier too, but it froze my session. But this is fun. But I'll just leave it there. Just showing how to get it, and then it also can handle package sources. So here's a source, the name of the source, same thing here, the full provider full name, the location of it, and then getting that, adding, removing. So now, one nice thing about this is that if, let's say, you create a package provider or someone else creates a package provider for something, if you implement the appropriate operations, which is basically just install, uninstall, and maybe one more for latest would be the find. As long as you import those or implement those two operations, you now have DSC resources at your availability, so that you'd have to rely on someone else to go ahead and do that. I think Ryan, we had a conversation a while back about maybe a couple of weeks ago, about someone wanting PowerShell Git v3 native DSC resources, and they're never going to get completed for quite some time. So this can handle that for you.
Yeah.
All right. So now this was the beginning portion completed. So now hopefully you have a clearer understanding of how to use AnyPackage. So now the next piece is we're going to jump in. If you wanted to create a package manager or package provider yourself, how would you do that? How do you extend AnyPackage for your own use? And so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through this. We have 8 steps. We're going to walk through how to do it. We're going to use PowerShell, and we're going to leverage that and create our own package provider. And so what this package provider is that Chocolatey, NuGet, they both use basically a zip file with a special file inside of it that has the package metadata in it. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that same concept and create our own Chocolatey Lite. We're going to create a zip file. We're going to put a package metadata in it in a file, and then we're going to install packages, uninstall packages, update packages, find packages, all through that. So for the first thing here, let's go ahead and look through this boilerplate code to take a look and see how a package manager or package provider is defined. So we have our module here. Let me first show the PSD1 file. The PSD1 file is just a standard PSD1 file. You'll see the root is point to our PSM1 file. The one AnyPackage specific thing is in the private data section. There's an AnyPackage key, and then there's a provider's key inside of that. This can be a string or an array of strings. And so what this is, remember earlier when I did get package provider list available, it's using this key to determine which package providers your module ships. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the PSM1 file. Get rid of that here. We're going to have two using statements at the top. If you've never done this before, a using statement is just saying the first one is it's going to import the module and load its types so that when you create a PowerShell class, those types are available to you. And then the using namespace is just saying use all the types in AnyPackage.provider namespace so you don't have to use the full name for them. So instead of putting AnyPackage provider on all of these at the beginning, I don't have to do that. It just lets me use the short name. So on this line here, this is the package provider attribute. It has one required parameter, and that is the package provider name. There's a couple optional ones. We'll get into that in the next example. We're going to define our class. The class name here is going to be called zip provider. You can call it whatever you want. And the 2 colons denotes that you're going to inherit this class from a base class. And the base class that you're going to inherit from is called package provider. So that's everything you need to define a package provider. It doesn't do anything, but that's all you need to do. And then the last 4 commands here are how you register when your module gets imported. So first, you're going to have to create a GUID. And in the package provider manager, there's a register provider method. So you pass it the ID, the type of your package provider. So you can see that there. And then you also pass the module name. And that will register it into AnyPackage. And then to support the ability of when you remove a packet or remove a module, and then it also removes your package provider, you're going to add this piece here, which is when your module is on remove, it's going to unregister it as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
And that little bit there with on remove is really, really useful if you want to do any additional cleanup of things like log files or whatnot that you might be using as part of your module.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that I know not a lot of people know that it's there, but it's a really, really powerful thing, and it's been there, I believe, since V2 when the module system came in.
Yeah, one caveat with it is like it's kind of mimicking .NET events, but it's actually not an event. So what can happen is if you let's say set an on remove, but there's already someone else set an on remove, you can wipe out their config. So you have to be careful with it. Just be careful that on remove's not already set, or merge your script blocks, or do whatever you want, but make sure you just don't wipe out someone's config. All right, so we went ahead and imported our module. Let's go ahead and do get package provider, and look, it exists. Everyone cheer. It's great. We're going to go ahead. I'm going to do the next piece in a second. But that's all you need to do. Just 3 lines of code, a couple using statements, and then the registering piece. And now you got a package provider. So let's take a look at the next step. So our package provider, we talked about a package provider can support packages by name and packages by file and packages by URI. I forgot to mention URI, but that's another one. But so what we're going to do here is we're going to modify this package provider attribute. We're going to add the optional value file extensions, and you can support 1 or multiple file extensions. So what this is going to do, AnyPackage is going to do the filtering for you so that you're only going to have to process the file extensions that you've defined. And then it's also saying here, this package provider doesn't support finding, installing, updating packages by name. And then that's the only line we changed. And so what we're going to do here is going to go ahead and import that. One thing I forgot to mention here, since we're using PowerShell classes, you'll notice here that I had to create a new PowerShell session. The reason for that is because once you define a type, this is the same for .NET types and C# as well, but once you define a type, you can't remove that type. So you have to create a new PowerShell session to iterate on. So now that we have our clean session, we're going to import that. we're going to go ahead and get our package provider. Once we got our package provider, let's go ahead and take a look at those values that aren't shown by default. So this type has the package provider name, the implementing type. This is the one that you pass the registering piece. So this is when so AnyPackage knows how to create your package provider instance. You got the GUID here, the module that it came from, the full name, the module version, the operations, which we talked about is like finding, getting, installing, all those other ones. The priority we talked about a little earlier. And then now we have a couple values. The package provider by, or package by name is set to false because that's what we defined. Package by file got set automatically for us since we set file extensions. And package by URI is still false since we didn't define any URI schemes. So now our package provider has a second piece of information set for it. So we're getting a little closer to actually having a usable package provider. So let's look at step 3 here. Step 3, we're going to implement find package. So find package, we added a few more lines. What we did here is we're going to add, you can see the comma here after package provider. You can only inherit from one base class, but how you get around that and have it implement certain interfaces. And so what this is an interface, and interfaces start with I. So I find package. And if you have never used interfaces before, this is kind of how they work. An interface can define properties, methods, and other certain things. A method is basically just a function. It takes some values, processes it, and returns stuff. So here, the way this is defined is, void is the return type. So that's the first thing. So it's not going to return any data when we call this. The name of the method is called find package. And all of the methods are basically one-to-one. So I find package implements just one interface called find package. And it takes one parameter called package request. That's the type. And then I'm going to set the variable name to request. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the package info. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that does. You don't need to know everything in here, but basically what this is doing, it's going to take a path. It's going to open file stream. So a file stream is like opening a file in memory. And so that's what we're doing. We're opening the file. Then we're going to pass to, because it's a zip archive, we're going to import that. Then we're going to take a look at the entries. So these are all the files inside my zip. Basically what we're doing this is so we can look at the zip file, inspect its contents without actually unzipping it. So that's why we have to do all this nonsense here. We're going to look for the package file. And if the package file doesn't exist, we're going to go throw an error. And then we're going to go ahead and, if we found the file, we're going to read the file, convert it to JSON. So read to end, convert it from JSON, and then dispose of our object. So this is like removing the file lock off of the file. So that's that first one. So now we have a JSON file of our package. And I'll show you what the package looks like as well. Very creative with naming. So I have my Apple package, and it just has a couple of name value pairs. So the name of the package, the version of the package, the description, and then some metadata. So the author and then some other values. So that's what's inside of our zip file. And our zip file is down here in the repo here. All it is zipped up and has one file in here called test. What you got, Ryan?
Completely off topic, but the fact that you just brought up that package and it being Apple and it making a good pie, somebody that does some security researching was doing a jailbreak from GitHub Copilot by base64 encoding, asking them how to get an apple pie recipe.
That's awesome.
And it's just seeing that, I was just like, I have to share that with you all.
Well, I didn't know about that reference. Apples make good pies, so that's all I know. So what we're going to do here, now that we have our info, we're going to go ahead and create the source object. So for file-based package providers, you kind of want the source to be the actual file itself. So the source takes 3 parameters: the name, the location, and the provider. So the request object, we'll see if this works for us. Okay. Sometimes this doesn't work, but the next thing is may or may not work. So the request object It has all the information you need from the user that ran the command. So it has, we'll talk about dynamic parameters in a second. It has the name of the package if it's piped in through pipeline, the parameter set name, the path if it's using it find by path, pre-release, all this information. So you can use that to find out what you're actually working on. What was the request? And then a couple down things down here is that it also has a couple of methods. Of course, it's not working for me, but you don't have access to like write information, write error, write debug in the normal sense. Since what I'm doing is you're running this method and then you have to like pipe all that stuff back through the commandlet that's being called. And so like if you want to write verbose, you're gonna have to like write verbose and then use that. So instead of using write verbose, you'll use it like this. I don't have a helper method for that at the moment, but that might be something if people want it. But what we're gonna do here, so the request had the path because that's the file we're working off of. So we're going to build that. And then we're also going to, since every source and every package is tied to a package provider, we're going to pass that information as well. And so we're going to use my helper function called new source info. And all it does is takes a couple of mandatory parameters, the name, location, trusted. I don't know how much value people got out of trusted package repositories, but I went ahead and added it. So this would be like, if you have a package repository like PS Gallery, it's not trusted by default. So when you try to install a package, it tells you, hey, this package is coming from a repository that's not trusted. Do you want to install it? And if it is trusted, then it'll just bypass that warning. So that's what that does. And so what it's going to do here is it's going to create the object with all the values that you passed in. The helper function makes it a little easier to work with. And then now we're going to create the package information. So from our JSON file, remember we had the name, the version, the source just came from the file that, or the object that we just created. The description came from the package. And then the metadata, I had to convert it to a hash table because that's the way it wanted it. And then the provider as well. We'll pass that in, get the new one. All this function does is take an object through the pipeline and then get all the members or the properties of it and then turn that into a hash table. So if you ever needed that, there's a code for that. Takes a PS object, converts it into a hash table. The reason I needed that is because convert from JSON doesn't have a as hash table in PowerShell 5.1. So that's why I did that. And the last thing here, now once we have our package info object, we're going to do request write package. So this is going to send it back to the AnyPackage, and it's going to display on the screen if you told it to, or if it, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. So now we have find package. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right. So now we just imported that. So those like, let's say 15, 20, 30 lines of code. Now we actually have all of our, so now we support path. We gave it a zip file with that, JSON file inside of it. And now we have a package info object back to us. And you can see here, it also has our author as well. So now we've implemented find package. So the next thing after you find packages is installing them. I believe there's one other thing first. Yes, the provider info. So AnyPackage is stateless. And what that means is each time you run the commandlets, like if your package provider needs to maintain state, like let's say to a database or to like a, I don't know, some server that you're talking to, you wouldn't be able to maintain state between calls or invocations. But there is a way that you can do that, and this is modeled after the PowerShell providers and how they do it. So we have we're going to add in a couple of new things here. Our find package is still the same. We're going to define a new method. This is in the base class, but it's not used unless if you use it. We're going to say, we're going to have the initialize method. It's going to take a package provider info as well as the passed in through as an argument, and then we're going to use that to create a new object called zip provider info, pass in that provider info, and it's going to return a new object. So the way that object is defined, so package zip providers info inherits from package provider info, so that's going to be the base class, and then it's going to have one property called install path. And then this is the constructor because it has the method the same name as the class. It's going to take that package provider info, pass it along to the base class, and then in here, what we're going to do is we're going to say if we're on Linux or on Mac, we're going to set the install path to the user home, local share zip files. And then if you want on Windows, it's going to use local app data and the same path. So once that gets instantiated from initialize, now we're going to be able to have that. So we could have it, it's going to be pulled over through each invocation, because when you run find command, install command, anything like that, it's going to attach this object to it. Package provider. All right, so we're going to go get our package provider, and you can see here the type name is now using our zip provider info, and the install path property got added, and you can see it's using my Windows path. I could change that if I wanted to, since it's a read-write property. But now we have state. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and pull that in and use that for install package. So we're going to use that to define. So what we're going to do here, we're going to add a new interface called install package. We're going to have install package here, one method, just like the find package. So now we're going to flex on the parameter set name. If it's passed in through the input object, we're going to set the source, which would be the file name, like we did in find, and then set the package to it. And if it's finding by path, we're going to get the package info just like we did earlier. This is all the same info basically as the find package. But all it's going to do is going to set the install path. We're going to get it from the provider info. Remember, this is our zip provider info. And we're going to add the package name and the package version. I will write verbose here to grab the install path. And all it's doing here is going to expand the zip archive into our install path and then write out the package. So normally with install package, update package, save package, etc., besides the find and get, it doesn't actually return the object. You need to pass the pass-through parameter to it. So what we're going to do here, so now we have our package installed. It went ahead and extracted that, so we can do, let's do provider. All right, so we did recursive here. So here's our install path base, and then it extracted to the zip and then to the version or the folder. And so we got our package metadata and then our test file. So we installed that package. So after we install packages, you probably want to be able to figure out which packages are installed. That's the next piece. So we're going to implement git package. So most of this code is pretty much the same. The only thing that we're going to deal with here is git package. So what we're going to do here, we're also going to introduce one other thing, which is dynamic parameters. So there, just like initialize is on the base class, there's another one called get dynamic parameters. It takes a command name, and then what it does is it'll return an object for the dynamic parameters. And so this is a little different than what you're used to in the when you define the params block. But in the params block, it looks fairly similar. You define the parameter, so this is a required thing compared to the params block, and then you have your path or your property, and then the type, and then you mark it as a parameter. And this is kind of actually how .NET or C# commandlets actually define their dynamic parameters or their parameters in general. They just mark it with the attribute. And so now what we can do is our Git package is going to have a dynamic parameter of path. So we can specify our install path, and we can use that instead of the default one. So that's where we get the dynamic parameters. We can set that. This is a neat trick if you've never used it before. You can define a variable, and then you can do an if statement off of that, and then you can define a branching path and share it into that variable. So whatever gets output there gets put in that.
I have to say, you're going so deep. You're gonna have to put this code somewhere, right? You have this
Oh,
code
the
somewhere,
code is on
like this whole
GitHub already.
example, because I'm,
All of it, PowerPoint, the whole thing.
my mind is going numb at one point. This is like so awesome, but like, yeah, we're doing a
that's
good
fine.
job. So yeah.
Presentation. But yeah, this is I'm going fairly deep, but I'm trying to keep it.
Keep going.
All right.
No, you're doing good. So yeah,
All right.
please. I was just gonna say, yeah, I didn't want to forget that. We need to make sure that we share the code and that kind of stuff long term. So go.
Yeah. Let me put it in the chat real quick before I forget. So people who need to leave early, they can see it. I put into the chat the GitHub repository has the PowerShell or PowerPoint as well as all of these examples. So you can take a look at it at your leisure. You can look at this, but we keep going on here. We're going to have the get child item. So all it's doing is going to go look for all of the .package JSON files, read in that information. All of this is all the exact same. But earlier, I believe someone asked, like, how do you match on, like, is it using a substring like WinGet, or how is it handling the versions? So the request object has this nice little method called isMatch. And what it does is you can pass in a package name or a package version or both. And then what it will do is, let's say you return all the packages. Like, I didn't filter on anything here. But now, since I got all of them, I only want to return what the user wanted. So isMatch will use the wildcard match for the name if they surpassed it, or if the version, if they supplied a version range, it will also do that for you. So you don't have to do any comparison if the version is higher or lower or whatever. It just does that all for you, and it's going to write that out. So now we'll go ahead and run it. Oh. So now we have our Git package. So Gilbert, your question on the comparison. So the version string, there is an I comparable on versions, but there's not an I comparable on the package info object. Not sure if that meets your needs or not.
I was just thinking it'd be cool to compare. If I got a list of all my packages and I could compare, hey, I see this in programs. Is that the same thing that Chocolatey is providing? And then, I mean, I guess it would be kind of tricky to figure out what you would want to compare, but I could imagine that would be one of those things where it's like, oh, is it the same name? Is it the same exact version kind of deal?
Right, and you can kind of do that within PowerShell itself, right? If the name matches and the version matches, then do that. We got 2 left, so hopefully your brain hasn't turned to complete mush yet, Phil. But so once we installed it, we can get them. Now we need to uninstall them. So all the code's all the same here, except for the uninstall piece. We added our interface at the top. We're going to look, and we're uninstalling packages by name. So we're going to get the name, and we're also using the code that we used earlier, right? We added get package. So now we're just going to call it get package, get our package. If the package exists and the file folder exists, we're going to remove that. So we can do that. So we got our git package here. So let's go ahead and uninstall package. Package. So now our package is gone. So if I do git package again, that's gone. The last but not least is updating packages. So update package, if you supply a path, it's going to use that. Or if you pass in a package info object from like find package, it's going to use that. And so all it's doing here is going to call out to find package to grab the information. It's going to compare or first ensure that the package is currently installed, because if you don't already have it installed, you're not updating it. It's going to grab the latest file or the latest version of that package, compare that the package that was in that you want to install is higher than the one that's currently installed. So this is the opposite, right? So it's saying if the one I'm finding is in lower than the one that's currently installed, throw an error. And then if it's not, then it'll go ahead and install it. And since I'm using the exact same pipe here, I'm using AnyPackage in itself to do that, to call those other methods. So go ahead and do that. Oh no. Install. We're going to install version 1.0. We're going to install 2.0. You can pass the verbose here as well. But now we have 2.0 installed. And if we look at this here, we have both of them installed. And the last thing, let's say we want to just nuke our whole system, right? Let's go ahead and uninstall all of them. So now all of them are installed and nothing's left. So that, I'm sure it was a lot of code to take in all in the short amount of time. All of the information is out on the GitHub repo. You can take a look at it, look at each individual pieces that you want to implement. This is just an example of a file-based package provider. Later on, I could have add package sources, finding stuff by packages or by repository, that kind of stuff. But yeah, any questions, any comments, anything else anyone has? That's all for the tenant.
Well, I want to first give everybody an opportunity to ask questions, but I also really appreciate that you kind of went into two different directions with this presentation. Is that here's how you can consume the application or any package, excuse me, and talk about using it from an end user perspective, from an admin perspective, using it overall. But then also you went completely deep, which is awesome, and an example of hey, how you roll your own to do it. And so especially the idea of hey, this is how you install, your package in your provider, but hey, the fact that you're just exporting, zip file is one thing, but hey, you could have done 10 other things. And, the way in which you're logging, hey, you want to log it better? You can add some logging wherever you need to. You want to do some state stuff, you want to do some update stuff, is that here's a practical example of how to implement that and to implement your needs. And being it searching, be it finding, be it install, all of that's here and it's available for you. So I really appreciate it. It's awesome. And more questions? Yes, you're up.
If you're talking, you're on mute.
I had a quick question as to why this was made as a module rather than just as a package provider, because I noticed when your module just kind of reinvents the package management commandlets. Is that right? Whatever's in that module?
That's correct, because the reason that AnyPackage exists is because package management, that module that Microsoft created, it's not getting any updates. It's deprecated. Microsoft's not doing anything with it anymore. So with that, I like the concept of it. I think it's useful. I think it helps it never got widespread adoption. So this was my take on taking that existing module that was unloved, right, and
Mhm.
rebuilding it from the scratch to actually provide value to the community for that. So,
Okay.
so
I
that's
just
why it
wanted
was
that
created as
clarification.
a full module instead of a package provider, because it wouldn't have accomplished what I wanted it to do.
I see.
Another thing I'll mention here is that since this AnyPackage uses the classes, PowerShell classes, and the interface to define the operations that it supports. If you were to write this in C#, if you're more comfortable with C#, the layout's the exact same. You're just defining a C# class or a .NET class, adding the base class, adding the interfaces is the exact same. The method is done that. And then let's say you're a little intimidated by classes. The one nice thing, I do have an example out on the repository. There's a template repository called Function Package Provider. And what it does is it removes almost all of the classes information, all the class code, and it pulls those out and defines them in functions. So all the method definition is just shelling out to your function. So try to make that as low barrier to entry as possible. So if you don't want to learn classes, that's a thing for you.
All right. Well, again, thanks so much, Thomas, for sharing. And this was certainly, I think, a valuable resource for the community overall. It'll be posted online to our YouTube channel, RTP-SUG, in YouTube. And so if you saw us on the community conference call, community call, and wanted to get more, well, you definitely got more today. And we certainly appreciate you joining us. And certainly, I'm still in awe, Thomas. So awesome job.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
And don't forget to join the Research Triangle PowerShell user group monthly. Look at our website, rtpsug.com. And thanks for coming.